Hello and welcome to this section on PowerAutomate. In this video, we'll be doing an introduction to PowerAutomate and creating our first flow. So if you're not familiar with PowerAutomate, it's an automation tool by Microsoft, and it allows you to automate processes and tasks. These tasks can be simple or they can be complex tasks, and they require minimal or no code at all to create. So I'll include in the video description the link to the documentation of PowerAutomate. I would recommend that you read through it. It has some information on what is PowerAutomate, and it also has a video that you can view to get some more information. And it also tells you who is PowerAutomate is for and what is the difference between types of flows, and a lot more information on how to create a flow. Great, so let's head over to flow.microsoft.com. This is the portal to access PowerAutomate, and to access it you will need an account. You can create a free account. This will be valid for 30 days. To create the free account you will need your organization account. You can't use an email address such as Gmail. Alternatively, you can view my video on Microsoft 365, where I show you how to create a Microsoft 365 tenant, which uses a E5 subscription. And this E5 subscription will not only give you access to PowerAutomate, it will also give you access to Power Apps and all the other service available in the E5 subscription. As we will be using SharePoint and Teams, I would really suggest that you create an E5 subscription using the developer network as described in my video. I already have an account, so I will close the screen and I will log into my PowerAutomate. You can either log in through flow.microsoft.com, or you can go to office.com, and here you have access to all the applications that you have in your tenant. So for example, Outlook, OneNote, SharePoint, Teams, Yammer, Dynamics 365, Power Automate, and Power Apps, as well as the Admin Center where you can create your SharePoint sites. So let's go over to Power Automate. I already have it open. The designer you can see on the portal here. On the home page we have an introduction. You can also search for a template or task or for an industry. So you can enter your search phrase in here and it will find it. You can also create a flow from a template that's an existing template. So you can see you've got the top picks, you've got remote work, you've got email, you've got notifications, and save to cloud. So there's a number of templates, and if you click on the template link, you can see all of the templates available to you. I'm not really going to cover any of these templates because we'll be creating ours from scratch, but I would recommend that you create some of these templates and just to test with them and see how they're created and what the structure of the templates is. If we scroll down, you can see over here we have some connectors. So you can actually create your flow by clicking on one of these connectors, and it will create it will initiate the flow from the data source. If we look at our connectors, you can see over here we have quite a few connectors. Some of them are premium connectors, which you've got to pay for, but others are included in your account. So for example, YouTube, Google Drive, FTP, and many, many more. Have a look at the connectors and see which ones will work for you, and try some of them out. Included on the left-hand side here, you can see you have your actions, so your approvals. So these are approvals that you need to approve. And then your business processes and flows. You have a link here to my flows. So I haven't created any flows. We're going to create one in a minute. You also have a link to create a flow. We've already showed all the templates that we have available and the connectors, which you can see over here. We also have a link to our data. So this is for the common data services, which is now included in the Dataverse. Previously, it was called Common Data Services, but Microsoft recently renamed that and included it into the Dataverse. You've got an option to monitor, you've got an option to AI Builder, Process Advisor, which is in preview, and solutions, as well as a link to the learning. If you click on the learning, it will take you through to the Microsoft documentation, and there's a lot of useful information here, so I'd really recommend that you review it. Let's go back over to Power Automate, and if we click on Create, we can create our first flow. So we have an option to create an automated flow. This would be a flow that would be triggered by an action. So for example, if we click on there, you can see over here it will list the types of flows that would be automated. So for example, when a new item is created in SharePoint, it will initiate this flow. So a flow can only have one trigger, but it can have multiple actions within that trigger. Let's close that. You also have the option for instant flow. So these are flows that are either manually triggered by a user clicking a button or performing a click on a button in Power Apps. And you can scroll down and you can see there's a number of different triggers that we can have. You can also schedule a flow. You can also create a desktop flow and have flows for business processes. For our flow, it's only going to be a basic flow. So we're going to create an instant flow. So a flow that we have to click on to run. So let's click on Instant Cloud Flow. And we will give it a name of test 1. Let's just type that properly, test 1. And we will manually trigger the flow. So we actually click on it to initiate the flow. Let's click on there and say create. This will bring us to our designer, where you can see over here we have manually trigger a flow. If we click on there, we can add an input. We're not going to use any input, but we're going to say next step. And this will allow us to add an action for our flow. So over here, you can see we have quite a few actions available to us. And if we scroll down, you can see all of them. You can also view it by the built-in flows, the standard flows, and also premium flows. If you've created any custom flows, they would also be displayed here. But let's click on all. And at the search bar at the top here, let's say send email. And you can see all of the options that it lists over here for the types of flows that we can create. So it has connectors to Gmail, SMTP, Spark Post, SendGrid, and notifications, and many more. Let's scroll down here and just have a look at get an idea of all the types of flows or all the types of actions that we can create with this. If we scroll up, the one that I want to select is send an email, and this is version 2, and it's going to be using Office 365 Outlook. So in this action, we will send an email, and you have the option to send an email to a specific person. This could be an email address, but I want to set this dynamically. So set it to the person who's logged in and initiated the flow. So over here, if we click on dynamic, you can see it pops up with the screen on the left, on the right-hand side, and you have an option for user's email address. So this will be using the person who's logged in or the person who initiated the flow. In this case, it will be my email address. You can put a subject over here. Again, you can have a date and timestamp. You can use dynamic content, but I will leave that out for the moment, and I will just say test flow 1. And over here, we can also add our content. Content can be dynamic, but I'm going to leave this as static, and I will just type testing our first Power Automate flow. If we wanted to, we could add additional actions, but because this is just a basic flow and introduction, I will leave it as it is, and I will click on save. This will save our flow. To run this flow, we can click on the test icon over here in the top right-hand corner, or we could go back to our flows and we could run it from there. Let's first run it from the test, and let's click on test flow. I'll perform the trigger and actions, and below there you can see we have an option to test. If you click on test, it will ask you if you want to continue. It's using your user profile in Office 365. Let's click on continue, and you can see over here it's using my profile or the owner of this flow, and let's say run. And you can see over here it's run successfully and it has a green tick. If there was an error, we would have an error message. Let's click on done. The advantage with running it through the designer in the test mode, you can see the output. So over here, if we click on our trigger, you can see over here we have our inputs and we have our outputs. This is a really basic flow, so it doesn't really show that much information, but if we click on the action to send an email, you can see over here we've got the to, we've got the subject, and we've got the body. So this is a good tool to use if you're having an error, so you can actually view the information that was used or generated by your flow or your action and use that for troubleshooting. I will close that and let's just go back to all of our flows. So if we go to my flows, you can see over here, now we have test one listed under our flows. If we select the flow, we can click on the run icon, or we can click on the run icon at the top here in the menu bar. Let's just click on run. Again, it gives the same information and we can say run flow. And when it's done, it gives a message that this has been completed successfully. I'll close that. We could also go into our office.com and we could click on icon for the Outlook. I already have Outlook open and you can see now we have 2 emails in my inbox. If we click on the first one, you can see this is the first email that we generated with the flow. It's got my email address and it's got the text over here and it also has the subject. The second one that we ran, it has the same information, but you can see the time that it was sent is different to the first one. Great. So what we did over here, we created a basic flow and used the flow to generate an email that was sent to the person who initiated the flow. In this series, we will be looking at Power Automate and going into more depth. We will be creating projects and using the projects as a learning experience to emphasize the different features provided by Power Automate and some of the connectors that it has available to us. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video where we start our first project.